Welcome to another Tea Time show with me, Mark Tillison. Today I want to talk about Google Ads Audience Insights. So 4 questions we'll be covering in this show. So what are Google Ads Audience Insights? How do I create these audiences in Google Analytics? And I'll show you how to do that. How big does an audience have to be for you to get the audience insights? And what can you do with the audience insights data once you have it? So let's start with the first one. So head into your Google Ads account. And the quickest way I find is if you just go to search and audience insights, then you'll land on this page. So what this is Google looking at the audiences that you have created and added to your Google Ads account and giving you some insights into those audiences. So this one is just an audience of all visitors to a website, and then that gives me information about the people who have visited our website, the breakdown of male versus female, the age group, parental status, which is kind of interesting, and you have that in Google Analytics anyway. But the more important data is the in-market audiences that people in our visitor audience also belong to. And then it gives us some data. So people in our visitor audience are 14.8 times more likely than the general population to be in the market for new houses for sale or apartments to rent or randomly swimwear. So that's telling us the things that these people who are visiting our website, who are in our audience, they are also in these in-market audiences as well. So we'll come back to this in a bit more detail in a moment. Now, if we also look at affinity audiences, there's another video in our on our channel about in-market versus affinity versus custom intent and a whole bunch of others. And you can go and watch that video to understand what the difference is between the two. But affinity broadly is a much more kind of broad category, a more long-term interest. So people who are dog lovers or business travellers or shop in department stores or nightlife enthusiast or whatever else it might be. But the interesting one here is in market. So the only thing to remember here is that some of these are just correlate with your audience, and some of them are more what we would call causational. So so in this case, this particular one is for a teeth whitening clinic. So actually the fact that you are looking for a new house does not necessarily also mean that you are looking to have your teeth whitened. And the fact that you're interested in swimwear does not necessarily mean that that's an audience you would want to target with teeth whitening ads, and so on and so forth. So these are just correlative, they just correlate, okay? However, you could argue that if you are looking to travel, you're going on a trip to New York or a trip to Italy or whatever else it might be, that actually that is when that creates a demand for teeth whitening, for argument's sake. So it's a little bit tenuous, but there, obviously we're just looking at one account. There are other accounts that I've looked at where some of the in-market audience is actually, they correlate, and there's some causation there as well. So it means that we could use this information to improve or create campaigns. So that's broadly what the audience insight data is. So our next question is, well, how do I create the audiences to be able to get the insights for them in Google Ads? So to do that, head to Analytics, head into the Admin section. And then we want to look at audiences, okay, and then we've got a list of audiences. Again, there's another video that goes into detail a bit more of how to do this, but you can effectively just say just a list of anybody who has visited the website. So I could just say sessions is more than 0, so that's everyone who's visited the website would be in my audience. You could equally combine any number of attributes So you could decide that you only want females in your audience, or you only want males, or you only want 18 to 24, 25. You could specify the demographics, you could specify the language, you could specify that they're using an iPhone or an Android device, you could specify people with a particular browser. There's any number of things that you could do to create an audience. Some of the common ones might be that they visited a particular page or a number of different pages on your website. So you may want to think, if you have a website that sells one product or one service, then all visitors to your website are pretty much going to be the same kind of audience. But if you have a website where you sell different services to slightly different audiences, then you probably need to think about creating kind of smaller audiences of the types of visitors. So to give you an example, let's say you are a clothing store and you sell men's clothes and you sell women's clothes, or maybe you sell evening wear and you sell children's clothes and you sell shoes. So you might want to create an audience of people that looked at pages in which the URL contained the word shoe. So you could do that. So you've now got an audience of people interested in shoes. You could also create an audience of people who are interested or have looked at shoes pages that have also reached your shopping cart, or people that have browsed shoe pages that have also completed a transaction. So however you break that down, and you could create as many as you want in principle, and then obviously you need to add those to Google Ads. So if we look at let's just look at some of these. So there is an option in here where we could say, okay, I've got an e-commerce of the screen name contains shopping or product or Kelku or Amazon or Magento or something like that. And then what we do is then we add the destinations to send that to our Google Ads account. And that is where you will then see, just heading back in there, that's where you will see them in this list. Okay, so we pick an audience to get insights on. Now, as long as you have shared those from Google Analytics, they will appear in this list. And what you will then get is a complete list here of all of the audiences that you have access to that are shared with this Google Ads account. And we can see that some are in grey and some are in normal text. Now, the reason for that brings me on to our third question. How many users do I need in a list for it to be eligible? And the answer there is, if we look at that, you need 1,000 active users in your list for Google to be able to have enough data to analyse it and determine kind of some commonality between those users. So you need 1,000 people in that list. So what that means is that you don't want to get too specific with your audiences in this particular case to use them for audience insights. The more specific you get, the more granular you get, the more you try and squeeze the kind of the attributes that you want in your audience, the more you are going to limit the number of users, and therefore you are not going to get audience insights unless you have 1,000 active users within that audience. So what can you do to make sure the audience is relevant and specific enough, but also has enough people in it to be relevant? So one thing that you can do is change the membership duration. So if the default on this is 30 days, so if you extend that to 120 days, you should, in principle, get around 4 times the number of users in there. So if you're getting around 250 users a month, maybe 300, and you make this 120 days, the audience should be big enough in Google Ads then to be able to give you some audience insights. So what audiences might you want to create? Well, people who have viewed particular types of content, and you might want to group those together. People that have completed a transaction, people that have converted into a lead, people that have viewed more than one page, people that have their session time is longer than 30 seconds. So the people who've actually spent a little bit longer on your website. People who have, even, again, some other videos on this, but people who have viewed a blog post and scrolled to 75% of the depth of that page. So what we're trying to exclude is people who have just landed and left. So maybe you have display campaigns that are attracting clicks and people are just landing and leaving. We don't really want to kind of target or understand those people because they're not valuable to us. So what we do possibly want to do then is we want to include the people that have engaged a little bit more with our content, viewed more than 2 pages on our website, or more than 1 page, but 2 pages or more, users that have visited our site more than once, those sorts of audiences, so that we can understand the kind of valuable traffic, not just all the traffic. So that's what's important there. So we create our conditions and then we share that with Google Ads, and then as you saw in there, you can now see that we get these audience insights. So the next question is, what can I do with this audience insights data? Well, the truth is there's kind of lots that you can do, actually. So the first thing you certainly could consider doing is creating a display ads campaign, or adding these audiences to your display ads campaigns and targeting those people in the in-market audience. Okay, so you could look at your data in audience insights and say, well, actually in this case it's teeth whitening. I don't really want new houses for sale, I don't really want apartments for rent, swimwear is probably not really important, but actually look, if you're looking for a trip to New York City or a trip to Italy and you are in the market for that, and let's have a look in here. Lots of our visitors they're more female than male. So actually we could choose to only target females, or maybe males and females. We could also say, well, most of our audience is 25 to 34. And 35 to 40, 25 to 34 and 35 to 44. So we could create a display campaign with some wonderful banner ads offering our teeth whitening service to people within a geographic nearby, who are 25 to 34, 35 to 44, and are female, and are in the market for a trip to New York City or trip to Italy. Now, if our objective of our display campaign is to drive bookings and leads, then we could set that up on a target CPA. So what we're looking for is a cost per booking, a cost per lead, and we could say, okay, well, we're happy to pay £35 for a booking, for example. Now we could create our campaign, target the in-market audience within a radius of the location of the clinic, and also females, and within the right age group. And then with target CPA, the machine learning would then work out which of those clicks, which of those people will be likely to convert into a lead and which ones are. So we give it 14 days and it learns what converts and what doesn't. So we can start testing anybody who is looking to go to a trip to New York City, anyone that's looking for a trip to Italy, anyone that's going on a trip really anywhere, and we could add 25 different in-market audiences to test them, to see which ones convert and which ones do not. So that's if we're looking at kind of lead generation. The other thing that you could be doing is creating a display campaign, which is higher in the funnel. So this is more about brand visibility, awareness of your service. So you might consider doing that on a CPM strategy. So that's more about paying for the number of impressions that you get. You might pay 15 pence, 30 pence, 45, 50p, 60p, whatever else it might be, per 1,000 impressions of your ads. So the objective of those ads is just getting your brand in front of that audience that might be interested in your service at some point. So that's the second thing you could do with this in-market audience data. So the next thing that you could do is overlay these audiences over your search campaigns. So you add these as what we call observation. And what we do there is effectively we can observe those, we can look at the cost per click, the cost per conversion, the average ad position, all that data for each of these audiences. And if we find that the conversion rate or the number of conversions is higher for people who are searching for the keywords you are bidding on that are also within these in-market audiences, then we can increase the bids for people in these in-market audiences, for example. Or if we find that there are certain in-market audiences that convert at a lower rate and the cost per conversion is higher, you could lower the bids for those in-market audiences. So for example, if we're bidding on teeth whitening, and we add the in-market audience for trips to New York City and trips to Italy, and maybe we add the one for swimwear. I'm not sure I'd recommend it, but just as an example, we are not bidding any more or less. We're already getting that traffic. This is just kind of spotlighting that data. So over a period of weeks, we can then look at that data and say, well, people who are seeing our ads and clicking our ads that are looking for swimwear, they don't really convert any better or any worse. People who are in the market for trips to New York City that are looking for teeth whitening, actually our conversion rate is 50% higher, our cost per conversion is lower. That's awesome. Okay, well, let's increase our bids for that audience when they're searching for teeth whitening by 25%. So we know that more people are doing that. We want higher visibility. We want those clicks because they convert better. We might find that trips to Italy, for whatever reason, people who are looking for trips for Italy that are in the market for that are also looking at teeth whitening, their conversion rate is worse. So we could actually do a bid adjustment and lower that by 20-25%, for example. So you can overlay these and observe the behaviour of people in those markets alongside your search campaign. So that's another thing that you can do with this data. You can also do the same thing. You can add the affinity audiences. So you might want to add luxury travellers to your search campaign as an observation. And then, again, do bid adjustments like I just described. So you could also do that. And that could be really revealing and quite valuable. The next thing that you can do is kind of outside of Google Ads, but if you understand that the visitors to your website, and if you can create an audience that's big enough that has those 1,000 users, then you could get some insights into the people that convert on your website, which is way more powerful. You know, visitors are great and we all like lots of traffic, but what I really want to know is who converts? What's the insight into those people? So if I can find that actually most of my conversions come from females, and most of my conversions are 25 to 34 or 35 to 44, and most of them are not a parent, for example, then, and I know, again, what their affinities are, things like that, what that can then inform me is, well, if I have a content plan, and I'm going to write about you know, different things in my industry, whether that's fashion, whether that's technology, whatever that might be, this information helps inform me who is reading my content and also who is landing on my landing pages. Now, the ultimate objective with most campaigns, certainly that we work on, is that we want more conversions, we want more leads, we want more bookings, we want more sales through our e-commerce store. So if we can understand that more of our transactions and more of our leads are coming from females rather than male, then we want to change or maybe optimize that language and the way that we speak to our audience on our landing page and the images that we use. We want to gear those towards females who are 25 to 44 and that are not a parent in this example. So it means that we can now create content in a tone of voice and using a language that particular persona, those types of people with those attributes, would appreciate. So, you know, that will improve our conversion rate amongst women, 25 to 44. It may harm our conversion rate for males, but overall our conversion rate will be greater. In principle. So that's another thing that you can do, is inform your content marketing plan and the content you're writing and the language that you are using and the images you are using in your content, so in your informational content. But more importantly, on your landing pages, we know that these people are female, we know what age group they are in, we know more about our market and our visitors, so we can optimize our content and the language that we use and the words that we use in that way. The other thing that we can also look at here is what devices people are using. I was looking at some other data just earlier before I started this video on another account, and it was quite revealing that actually more of our conversions came through tablet devices than desktop. So when we are creating the website and the web pages and we're optimizing for conversion rates, we are mainly looking at mobile devices because that's where most of our traffic and most of our conversions come from. But then typically we'd probably be saying, well, mobile first and computer second. But in this example, actually it was mobile, then tablet, quite a clear winner over computers. So most of us who are kind of designing websites, we're sitting looking at a big computer screen and saying, well, how does this work? How does it lay out? And we're looking at kind of computers first. And then usually we're saying, well, does it look like a mobile? But actually in this case, with that particular data I was referring to, most of our traffic comes through mobile. The second biggest is tablet devices. And the third, is only about 19% of the traffic or 19% of the conversions actually happened on computers. So that's, again, pretty revealing. So which devices are most important when we're creating the website? If we're looking at the layout of the landing page to improve conversions, which devices do we need? So again, some really powerful data. So finally, and this is kind of a kind of big data opportunity. There are a few things in here. So two things you could do. One is that you could create a search campaign with some quite low intent search terms. So let's say, for example, normally you wouldn't bid on the word holiday. It's too vague. We don't know what holidays they want, but there's tons of search traffic on it. But we don't know what destination that person is interested in. We don't really know anything about what that person wants other than a holiday. Okay, so what you could do is you could add the in-market audiences for trips to Italy and only target those people and only target the word holiday or holidays or cheap holidays or holidays for couples and those broad things where we don't know the destination, but only bid on those when that audience is also in an in-market audience for trips to Italy or trips to New York, for example. So again, that's probably a very broad example and possibly wouldn't work too well, but you can see how you can understand how you can combine the keyword targeting with also people in market, and therefore you'll only show ads for people that are in market to destinations that you service, as an example. So you could do that. The next thing you could do, and again this is dependent on kind of really big data. Remember, we need kind of 1,000 users plus to get these insights, is if we're getting a lot of traffic through particular pages, you could actually create the technology where a female user would see a different version of a page to a male user. So you are personalizing that. So to give you some crude examples, we have a landing page. It has a picture of a smiley lady at the top, or it has a picture of a smiley man. Now, if we test A versus B, then we might find that smiley lady actually gets more conversions. However, if you can drill into that data a bit more, you might find that smiley lady produces a better conversion rate for men and smiley man produces a better conversion rate for ladies. You might find something completely different, but as an example, what that means is if we've got one image for male and female, we get a better conversion rate from, say, females, but we're getting a slightly worse conversion rate for males. So what you could do is engineer your website so that if we know the user is female, they get the female optimized experience on that landing page. And if it is a male visitor, then they get the male optimized experience, which means we optimize the conversion rate for both male and female separately. Now you could go even deeper into that and go by demographic. So you could look at whether you're a parent, whether you're not, whether you are, what age category you are in, those sorts of things as well. But that's how you could really improve your conversion rate, by segmenting and personalizing that data. And some of that will start with the in-market audience data and the Google Ads audience insights. So really valuable. So just to recap, create your audiences in Google Analytics. Remember that you need 1,000 active users within those lists to get the audience insights. Consider adding your in-market audiences or affinity audiences for display targeting. Consider adding those to search campaigns as observation and then adjusting bids accordingly. Consider how you can help build the persona who is, those people who are visiting your landing pages and who are reading your content, to inform those two things. I hope this really helps and helps you understand how valuable this audience insights data is and how to use it. I'd love to hear in the comments how you are using this, and if you do have questions, I'd love to do another video for you another day just to answer your questions.